Okay, so I talked about the 5 things I don't like about South Korea, 5 things I would change, and I want to go on and mention that no country is really perfect, and every country has the ups and downs. Every country has the pros and cons. So the 5 things I don't like about Korea, and the 5 things I don't like about the U.S. That's what I'm going to talk about now. So this is just something else I want to talk about because everyone, especially Americans, they think U.S. is the greatest country in the world. Blah 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 blah. It's a land of freedom, etc. But America is a great country, but there is also not the perfect country. So there's 5 things I want to talk about that I don't like about the U.S. that I think should be changed. Okay. Number one, I think that the U.S. is too crazy about guns. This is the only developed country. I think that America is the only developed country that I know that guns are like completely legal and you can carry it almost everywhere except for like the gun-free zones and stuff. But you can carry it almost anywhere, and a lot of people have guns in their homes, and they have like tons and tons of firearms. They have like 310 million firearms, as many firearms as there is people in the US. So that's massive, you know. And that's just a part of American culture, is that they like to carry guns, and I realize they like to do they carry it for self-defense, they carry it for hunting, for sporting reasons. But to me, there's no reason why a civilized society should have a gun these days, because that's the Second Amendment is a law from the 18th century, and that's a long time ago. And I don't know why it's so anachronistic, and I don't know why it has to carry over today. Because back then people did have to do hunting, like to get food and stuff. But these days we have supermarkets, we can buy our meat and stuff. We can buy fresh meat just at a deli. Like why do you need to have guns to hunt things? Like I don't know why you need to hunt things, And for self-defense, like isn't a gun a little bit overkill for self-defense? I mean, if you look at other countries in the world like Canada, Europe, or Japan or Korea, guns are all banned here. There's no guns. Well, I wouldn't say banned in Canada. It's not technically banned, but like it's very, very hard to get a gun. So in those countries, I don't see that many murders as in the U.S. The murder rate is much, much lower. The homicide rate is much, much lower. The rate of mass shootings I see in the U.S., which is like one every weekend. Like there's some mass shooting going on once a week. And then you have all these stories of toddlers and children accidentally shooting themselves with guns. It's just crazy. Like that wouldn't happen in countries where there weren't guns, right? Because like they wouldn't be able to get their hands on the guns. And people who are pro guns, the NRA folks, they say, well, if you ban guns in the U.S., then criminals are going to find guns anyway, and they're going to, get them from other countries. They're going to find some way to get guns to kill you, and they'll just find some other weapon to murder you with. Well, the thing with that is that if you take the example that they always cite, it's like Chicago, because Chicago has very strict gun laws, and yet there's a lot of murders in Chicago. Why is that? Well, it's because they can always get guns. Criminals can get guns from other states where the gun laws are more lax. So Chicago, maybe it's strict guns, it's strict gun laws, but they can always get the guns from states where there isn't a strict gun laws, right? It's very, very easy to get the flow of traffic because there's gun trafficking probably going on between the states, right? And from Mexico as well. So they're always going to get the guns from somewhere else. But if you do make it more strict in every state, then it's definitely going to be a lot more harder, right? Like in Canada and Europe, this is essentially the case, is they make it hard to get guns everywhere in the country. It's not just one state or one city has more strict gun laws than the other. And the U.S. is very state by state. So like if you don't like a state with strict gun laws, you can always go to a state like Texas with weak gun laws. So I mean that you can buy guns without a background check, or like a gun at a gun show or something. It's crazy because guns are not really regulated, and they don't do mental health checks and stuff. And a lot of these mass murders are committed by people who have mental problems, and it's very, very easy for them to get a gun to do that with, because in these states with very loose gun laws, it's very, very easy for them. Or they can go to a gun show or a private dealer, and they don't have to really go through many background checks or anything. So very easy for them to get a gun. As for criminals finding ways to murder people, well, if a criminal has a knife, for example, right? Because if they don't have a gun, maybe they'll have a knife to kill you with. A knife is not as deadly as a gun is. A gun will be pretty deadly. Like a gun will almost always be fatal if you shoot, like, because it penetrates, right? A bullet penetrates. A stabbing, you have to physically go up to the person and then stab them, and even then it's not really fatal unless you stab them in a critical area. So stabbings are not always fatal like gun shootings are, right? With guns, you can shoot them from far away. You can shoot 10, 12 more people at a time, especially with an automatic. And with guns, with knives, then you actually have to go up to the person by person, and stab them. So that's obviously a lot less deadly and a lot slower than how a gun kills people. So if you ban guns, yeah, criminals are going to find other ways to kill people, for sure. But it's not going to be as deadly. Like, there's not going to be as many people killed because they won't have, like, a semi-automatic or whatever, or a handgun or a pistol or whatever. And those irresponsible gun owners who put their pistol on, their just a table or something, and then a kid could pick it up and shoot himself or their sister, that won't happen with a knife. I don't think a toddler is gonna pick up a knife and start stabbing someone. That's not as easy as just picking up a gun and, oh, what does this trigger do? Bam. Like, that's not as easy. It's not as easy for an accidental murder as it is for a gun if you have a knife. So the knives versus guns debate, there's no question that knives are definitely less deadly than guns are. So if you ban guns, then if you have knives, then yeah, it's going to be less deadly. Stab wounds aren't always as fatal as gun wounds are. It's going to be a lot slower to kill people, so it's not going to be as many fatalities. So yeah, that's a lot I want to talk about, but that's just number one. Okay, number two I don't like about U.S. is that people, especially conservative people, Republicans, they think that socialism is essentially equal to communism. So Bernie Sanders, is very popular right now. He's running, and people call him a socialist and communist. Yeah, he's a socialist, but what's so bad about socialism is what I don't understand. Like, people speak of socialism in the U.S. as something that's really, really bad, and it's not. Like, they think that socialism is like communism, but it's not communism. It's not Marxism. Like, I don't think people who talk about those words know what they really mean. Like, actually, none of the countries in this world are really communist. Like, stuff like North Korea and Cuba, China and stuff, they were communist before, but they're not really communist as to the same kind of interpretation that Karl Marx had it, when he coined that term. So it's not the same. It's not Marxism. No country is really Marxism, because if Karl Marx had his way, everyone would be equal, and and there wouldn't be any dictators, because a dictator is unequal, right, to a regular citizen. So there is essentially no country in the history of this earth that has been really Marxist. What you do have is corruptions of communism. You have Leninism, right, the Soviet Union, Stalinism, Maoism. These are all corruptions of communism. It's not really communist. Their way of making everyone equal is to basically make everyone poor, and then they make themselves better than the rest by making themselves a dictator. So this is not communism. It's some kind of corrupted version of what they think is communism. So definitely they got that mixed up. China is not really communist right now. It's kind of a mix between socialism and capitalism right now. North Korea is the traditional dictatorship, corrupted version of communism. They haven't changed yet. Every other communist country like Vietnam, Cuba, and China right now is kind of a mix. And yeah, socialist is not communism. Socialism is, or democratic socialism, I like to say, is what Canada, Europe, Australia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, all these places that are republics essentially are socialist republics. In being like socialism, they promote welfare for citizens. Like, you pay more tax, and you in return to the tax, you get a lot of good benefits. Like, you get free education sometimes in Europe, or in case of Canada, you get lower tuition. You get easier affordability for education. You also pay for the healthcare for everyone, the so-called universal healthcare. And you have that in these developed countries, and that's not so bad. It's not so bad. So you pay some tax, but you pay some more tax, but in return you do get some benefits that can help other people and can help yourself. They have more social welfare. So I think that's a good thing. And what the people in the U.S. don't like is they don't like to help other people. They say, well, this is my money, I'm not going to help you, you're on your own, basically. That's the version of Americans think is, yep, it's my money. Don't take my money. I don't want to pay tax. I don't want to help you. You're poor. That's your fault. Like something like that. Whereas in socialist countries like Canada or Europe, they're like, well, let's help everyone. I know I make a lot of money, but I want to give some of that money to help the poor people, survive a bit better. I want to help the poor people with education, and I want to help them with healthcare if they get, if they get any diseases and stuff. For the U.S., if you don't have healthcare insurance, which you are now required to have because of Obamacare, if you don't have that, and you don't have insurance for some reason, and you're not employed, you don't have adequate coverage, well, you're basically bankrupt if something happens to you because the healthcare costs are so expensive. Well, in socialized countries like Canada or Europe, then it's very, very cheap, very, very cheap. And in my experience, the waiting times are not really that long. So, I mean, I had to wait a month in the US for a specialist, and I didn't have to do that in Canada. I can just go into any clinic, walk into any clinic in Canada. In Korea too. Like Korea does also the same thing. Everyone has healthcare. Just walk into somewhere in Korea and you can do it. It's not that expensive. It's subsidized. So that's a great thing about socialist countries, I think, and people really get it mixed up because they think it's bad. But it's not really that bad. There's nothing bad about socialism, okay? And people think, oh, well, it's my hard-earned money. Well, yeah, that's the Americans' mentality. Is they're very selfish, I think. They don't want to help other people. Okay, number 3 is kind of related to the conservative Republican view, but I think a lot of people are this is a pro-choice versus pro-life. This is about abortion. And the problem with this is that people who are pro-life, the people who are against aborting fetuses and stuff, it seems that for Republicans or conservatives, they actually care more about fetuses than they do about actual human beings, because they're always, fetuses, are murders, abortion is murder and stuff, and you kill however many babies a year this year, but they never talk about how many murders happen because of guns, because the same thing they support guns, they support, loose gun control or no gun control, and all these mass shootings and murders that happen because of that, they don't really care about it, but they care about your fetus, which hasn't even been born yet. So that's a little bit weird. I'm like, why you care so much about a fetus when you don't even care about an actual human being that died? Like an actual grown-up human being that died. I don't understand. That's so messed up to me. Is they care about abortion. The fetus hasn't even or an embryo or whatever. It's not even a developed human being yet, and yet a human being gets mowed down because of your support for low gun control, and then you don't care about that. That's still hypocritical and stupid to me. So that's one thing is I'm pro-choice because having abortion is, like a lot of countries, I think China is a big one. They have to have abortion because they don't have good sex education there, and a lot of people get pregnant. They don't use condoms, and I promote safe sex. So use a condom, use a birth control, whatever. But in the cases of rape and incest and stuff, then you should get an abortion, and it's your freedom of choice. It's like if you have the freedom to do whatever you want. If you want to have sex and then again, and then you don't use safe sex and you don't safe sex control or birth control or whatever, and you want to get an abortion, then yeah, do that. It's not my business to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. That's your choice. So that's my stance is pro-choice. And okay, number 4, people. The thing I don't like about U.S. right now is that it's too politically correct, and you have to be really careful about what you say, especially social media these days. And I know that I'm gonna get some flack on this for saying it on YouTube, but on social media these days, if you say something that's even remotely offensive, then someone's gonna criticize you for it. If you say something if you say something related to race or gender or something, you're probably gonna get criticized for it, especially if you're a man, and like I am. So yeah, it's really stupid that everything has to be so politically correct these days, and you really have to watch what you say. There was this advertisement on Facebook that had a really fat model or whatever, and then Facebook pulled it, and people criticized that, and I was like, well, you know that advertisers are paying for that ad, and they want people to click it, right? And who's going to click an advertisement with a big woman on it? Like, not as many people as going to click on that, like, as if it's an actual like skinny woman. That's just how it is. And other than that, like, being obese is not a good thing. Like, that there's actually like problems with that. It's a disease, being obese. Like, it's not just physically unattractive. It's like you can have a heart attack, heart failure if you're obese. Like, it's not a good thing. So there's no reason why like people there's no reason why you should support people being fat, is what I'm saying. Like, if you call someone fat these days, you're gonna get like blamed for being like body shaming or whatever. But that's what it is. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to be fat. It's actually it, as much as it is a disease for being too thin. Like, if you're too thin, then you have disease as well. But if you're too fat, then that's also a disease. So you want to be in the middle. You want to have a healthy body. You don't want to be fat. So I think that criticizing people for calling someone fat and stuff, that's like, well, that's just the truth. Hey, you're obese. Maybe you should do some exercise. Maybe you should control that more. It's just caring for someone's health, basically. It's not just because it's unattractive. Okay, and complimenting a girl too much these days is considered sexual harassment or objectifying them, which is stupid. So like these days, you can't even say a girl is pretty anymore because that's considered, you're objectifying me, you're caring too much about appearance, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's stupid. It's compliment's a compliment, okay? Like, well, why can't we even do that anymore? I get that you can't, like, I'm not catcalling anyone, I've never catcalled anyone, but I mean, just complimenting someone, there's nothing wrong with that. Saying anything basically against a girl online is going to cause you backlash if you're a man, which is, again, kind of too over the top. They think, like, these days online in social media, then the women think that all guys are like misogynists or whatever, and yeah, that's really stupid. And if you don't have enough diversity in your company or your game or your movie or whatever, then you get criticized for not having enough diversity. It's not enough women, there's not enough gays, not enough blacks, not enough transgenders. And yeah, it's stupid. Like, why couldn't we just make a game or a movie or stuff and not have to care about that crap, Like, why do we have to, like, always take into consideration we have to pander to this 0.03% of the population that's transgender? They're talking about the bathroom bill and stuff. Like, why is that such an issue? It doesn't affect that many people. I mean, are we going to let this small percentage of the minority of the population make decisions for, like, we're going to, like, focus on this small minority over everyone else, the masses, It doesn't make enough sense to me. Like, there's better things to focus on than that. And yeah, like, every movie having, like, gay or black person, what percentage of the population is actually gay, And I've complained about not having enough Asians in the Hollywood movies and games. Well, I'm pretty sure there's more Asians in the US than there is gays in the US. So yeah, if you have gays in your movie and games, but you don't have Asians in your movies and games, then that's kind of dumb, because there's actually 5% of the US population is Asian. So yeah, and you're focusing on transgenders, and that's like 0.03% of the population. Like, what the heck, What's with that? Yeah, just like everyone's offended by everything. If you say something, like, you can't generalize everything, you'll get criticized for it. You can't say anything even remotely sexist or racist. Anything involving a race or gender in your post or comments is going to be criticized. It's just stupid. We can't do anything anymore. This is a land of freedom of speech, It's freedom of speech. It's like, I can say whatever I want, Like, why do I have to be so politically correct? And this is one thing I like about Donald Trump, is that he doesn't care about this stuff. I don't like being politically correct. I don't want to, like, follow this certain path and stuff, because it's freedom of speech. We can say whatever we want. It's our opinion, We're not like forcing everyone to say, oh, you have to like this person, or you have to. That's what basically they're doing. They're saying the society is like forcing us to be like, you have to like gays, you have to like transgenders, you have to be happy, lovey-dovey with every race and every kind of person in the world, or else you're an asshole. That's what everyone's saying, and that's stupid. Like, everyone's different. We all have different thoughts. Sometimes we don't like a certain type of person, and not everyone has to get along with each other. So I hate that politically progressive society that we live in, and especially since the fact that I look on my Facebook and I see like articles that, you know, from IGN, from PC Gamer, from Economist, Time, from all these like magazines that I would swear like 50% of the time it's about these socio-politically correct bullshit, and the other 50% of the time they talk about actually what they're supposed to talk about. You know, what they're traditionally talking about, games or PCs or you know, whatever is currently in the newsworthy in the world today. But these days 50% of that, I swear, is like feminist stuff, progressive, like diversity stuff, and I just kind of really fed up with that. Okay, so number 5, my last one, is kind of related to that. I want to talk about gender equality in the Western society is kind of lopsided and opposite, contrary to what it is in Korea. I talked about how in Korea women actually require gender equality because they're actually being discriminated, right? They're actually being discriminated here for appearance, being pregnant, not getting paid as much. There's a 30% wage gap, but there's not as many feminists in Korea because they're afraid of getting harassed and attacked online, right? But in the U.S., or in other countries in Europe and the Western countries, there's so many feminists complaining about stuff that, to me, seems really, really trivial. And I've already talked about this I've already complained about this in my other video, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But basically, they want to be like men. Like, they think that men can do all these things, well, we can do everything, and men, that's fine. They have equal opportunity to do that. But they complain about literally every small thing. Like, what is it? Recently, there's a story about gorilla. This gorilla in the zoo, Cincinnati Zoo, or whatever, and the mother wasn't watching out for her son, and their son slipped into the cage, and the gorilla, you know, was in the cage, so they didn't want that boy to die, so they had to shoot the gorilla. And there's so many controversy online about whether they should have done that or the mom should have been at fault. And then, of course, this takes a sexist turn, and then people saying, oh, why are we shaming the mom? Why aren't we shaming the dad and stuff? And this is just stupid. Like, why does this have to be brought into everything? It's kind of related to being the progressive sexism, racism, everything is like kind of being like criticized. Anything even remotely that can be construed as being sexist or racist, and like it gets brought out, and that's just dumb. Like, why do we always have to think about that? Why can't we just think about, oh, maybe the dad wasn't there, and that was just the mom there. That's it. Like, why do we have to like criticize about everything? And yeah, like feminists, they think that men and women have to be equal, but they're not equal, really. Men and women are born unequal. We know we're biologically unequal. We're mentally unequal. Like, we have different kinds of thinking. If we thought the same way, then I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be so many guys or girls complaining about not being able to think. Well, there wouldn't be so many like songs about not being able to understand each other. And in relationships, there wouldn't be any breakups because we all think the same way, right? But we don't. We don't. Men and women think very differently. And trust me, if men knew what women were thinking all the time, that would be amazing. But we don't. So we're just different. Men and women are different. We've done different roles in society for millennia, and I think we should continue to do so because we are good at different tasks. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to say that women do one role and guys do another role. Like, guys are good at doing physical labor. Guys are good at doing construction, being engineers and scientists and that stuff. And I'm not saying women can't do that. They can. But what women seem to be good at is doing stuff that are more empathizing with people, and like they like to take care of people, be nurses. Like, they're really good at taking care of children, I think better than men. And I think that, for customer service, whatever, there's mostly women, receptionists, mostly women. Why? Because they're better at dealing with people. That's why a lot of cashiers, customer service reps, receptionists are women because they're better at dealing with people than men are. So I think women and men have their specific skill sets. They need not to be equal in their roles. I think the roles can be different, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. I don't think a man's role is better than a woman's role, and I don't think it's the opposite way, but they're just different. Because we're biologically different, and we're just born differently, and we are good at different things. So, yeah, the fact that everything a guy says in Western society can be misconstrued as sexist or misogynist by today's feminists and stuff, it's it's insane, especially when I'm living in Korea. It's something like this would never happen. Like, we they just wouldn't be anything like that here because there women here actually are like different, treated differently and discriminated against, and yet all the complaining done by feminists are by Western women. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it just seems unequal to me. And I already mentioned how like guys have to have sympathy for women in order for feminists to have some power. You know, like the reason why the first wave, the second wave feminists are able to succeed is because some men in a position of power were sympathizing with them and gave them the power to be able to do those things and push those things into legislation. Whereas in Korea, this is starting to improve, but still a lot of Korean men, they don't want that, right? And Western men are generally more sympathizing with women than Korean men are. And yet, you know, we get attacked for it online. There's so many men hating feminists online, so I don't get that. So those are 5 things I don't like about the U.S. 5 things I would change, or U.S. or West, U.S. especially. But the last 2 is more about Western society, about the politically correct stuff. So that's it. Thanks for watching. That's my rant, and it's just my opinions. But yeah, feel free to leave your comments.